Good afternoon. I'm Anita Tebby, and I'm a member of the Retiree. And my job, I love it, is to organize these travelogues. And today I have Judy and Wegman, who are going to visit with us about Costa Rica. And it's been time. This could go on and on, but they're just going to speak for about 45 minutes and then open it up to questions and answer. But I talked to them in a special way today. They're not only going to talk about the beautiful scenery, namely the beaches, the mountains, the rainforest, but they're also going to talk about the culture and the people. Not only the people that have lived there a long time, but the people who have migrated there from Europe, from the United States and Canada. So please join me in welcoming Phil and Judy Wegman.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, but like any good presentation, we're going to start off with a message from your sponsor. And the message is, we have a chocolate party coming up for student scholarships. It's going to be held Saturday, May the 10th, $10 to 10. We have in our midst a lady who's organized the whole thing, Lori Vogelberg. And so come to the chocolate party if you can. The other thing we're offering for auction is the quilt. Beautiful quilt that's made. We have tickets that are available if you want to buy any tickets. Lori's got them. I've got them. So keep that in mind. Okay, so to get started, as we mentioned, we really aren't newcomers to Costa Rica. We've been there a number of times. Our daughter initially moved there 5 years after the same time I retired. She leaves the house. Well, she had left the house a while back.
She was independent before that.
Yeah, she was very independent before that. She always wanted to live overseas. Had been living in Paris some, had been in Switzerland, had been a number of places. She settled in Costa Rica, where her first job there was managing like a bed and breakfast operation for tourists who came. But she migrated from that position to selling real estate, which is opened up a whole new bag of contacts of people that you know. Our latest trip to Costa Rica was last January. If you remember the great big snowstorm, which was January like 4th, 5th, we weren't sure we're going to actually, if we weren't sure that flight would be held. We thought it might be canceled. We flew out on the 7th, and even on the 7th, roads were very icy going out to the airport. In fact, Jonathan shared an incident. Was that your son?
Grandson.
But so it was touch and go whether we were going to make it or not, but we did. So we were on our way, and oh, here we go. Okay. Our flight out was 5:30 flight on the 7th. We had to be there 4:30, at least by 4:30. Actually, as early as you can. Usually, there's at least a 2-hour span of time you need to be there in advance. Welcome for an international flight. We flew from KCI to Houston. It was about a 2.5 hour trip. There is no straight through flight from Kansas City to Costa Rica. And we caught another flight then from Houston to Costa Rica and arrived at Liberia Airport at about 1:30 in the afternoon. All the flights were full, totally full. And people were dressed, we were dressed kind of in winter clothing because we were cold. There were some people dressed with short sleeve shirts, very casually. They knew what they were getting into. We should have, but we still wanted to be warm. When we arrived in Costa Rica, it was a shock. It was about 85 degrees. We were hot. And the first step when you get there to the airport, which you see, here's a bit of a picture of the airport right there. The first step is going through customs, and the custom agent always wants to know an exact address where you're going, where you're visiting. It can't just be, I'm a tourist, I don't know what I'm gonna go. You have to give them an exact address where you'll be. Then our daughter and son-in-law met us at the airport and then drove us to their home. And I might add here, from our trips in Costa Rica, the airport did not used to be air conditioned, but this time it's fully air conditioned. And not only that, you see these folks up here with the marimba, we actually had a kind of a greeting crew, you might say. It was a nice, happy touch.
Yeah, we've been going, this is be our, like our 8th time. And when we started, it was a very small, rough airport. Nothing was on ramps. You were up and down stairs and in non-air conditioned areas. Now you see where they've gotten to over this 8 years. And they particularly made a lot of changes when COVID was there because the airport was basically closed. So they did a lot of revamping of it during that time. And because of COVID is why our daughter left B&B and went into real estate because no one could go into Costa Rica. Yeah, this is a map of Costa Rica. And if you look at it, you can see the little star, that's San Jose, that is the capital. And it's in the middle of
Right in the middle.
of the country. Liberia is up towards the top if you look at it, and that's where we fly in and out of. And that's the only 2 airports in the country. There's those 2 and that is it. We have not been to San Jose, but it's the only metropolitan city they have. Let's see that, like Costa Rica is a very rural type of area. So Liberia is the main part. If we look at it on the map, the country below it is Panama. So the temperature in Costa Rica is always hot or hotter because you're right on that equator. And cool there is 70. Hot is more like upper 90s to 100. So most of the time they live in 80-degree weather, give or take some direction or the other. They have 2 seasons. They have the dry season and they have the wet season. The dry season is basically starts in November and runs through April-ish. And that is when they don't get rain or very limited rain. It's also a time that all of the foliage that is there basically die out or thin down. And the other thing that happens there, because there's not a lot of rain, they do end up, even though it's in a jungle, with water shortages. And that water at times it has to be rationed. But you can go the rest of the year where it rains every day or some part of a day or showers coming in and out. And then it's very green, very lush, and very beautiful. The first time we've been there in January was this year. And I really think that the better weather to go would be on what they call their shoulders, which would be our spring and our fall. But that would be when usually the weather is kind of more in between. And because it's really much prettier in my mind. I don't know about you, Phil, but I really thought it was much more prettier when we've been there the other times than in January.
Yeah.
So basically that's kind of where they're at and where they're located at. And
as you can kind of see this area where the arrow's pointing to, Samaro is where they live. That's the Nicoya Peninsula. So that's where they live. So you kind of see the whole country. And remember, right below that, Panama, the equator is right there. And above that is Nicaragua. Couple of things I might mention. Costa Rica has no armed forces. The local police are easily identified. They patrol the beach areas and through the town. I honestly will tell you, I've never seen anyone be arrested though. The local bank is kind of interesting when you go there, local bank. It's a small little bank. We went there to exchange money. And the first thing you notice is there's armed police officers when you walk in, and there are chairs at the back of the room, and there's always a lot of people waiting. Because in Costa Rica, you go there to pay your utility bill.
Oh.
I might add something here that I haven't. You complain about our mail service, right? Well,
they
in
don't
Costa
have
Rica,
mail.
there isn't any. Liz wouldn't get any mail at all if it wasn't for email. So that's one thing that, I mean, I should say, Among businesses, I think they work out a system to exchange mail, but for the regular customers, citizens there is no regular mail system.
And that's always been true. And I don't know how they communicated before they had internet. They use it all the time, but there's never been mail service there. I think San Jose is an exception because it is a metropolitan city. Outside of that, there is no mail service.
I want to
And
mention,
actually, Amazon only has one place that's somewhat close, and it's about 60 miles away.
a couple other quick facts I want to mention. If you're going to Costa Rica, get travel insurance. You might need it if you're ever involved in an accident. The travel insurance covers everything. The medical services there in San Jose are good private medical services that you pay for. The socialized medicine there, will have to tell you that it takes a long time for those residents to get in, and we've had known of one housekeeper, for example, who had broken her arm, and had she been able to get in right away and set it, she probably wouldn't have had any issues, but it took about 3 months to get in. Now she can't raise it set, she can't raise her arm up very high at all. So get travel insurance, it's really worth your time. Well, another incident we'll talk about, we can talk about other
So basically,
medical things.
we always get travel insurance just being reimbursed for our trip. But when you go to Costa Rica, you get travel insurance to cover for your health insurance. Because Medicare does not cover you out of country. So you already have that as an issue, but they don't have services that are that great.
All right, living in Costa Rica has its fair share of challenges. I want to point out on this picture, you see horses crossing. This is the road. This is one of the
This is a highway.
main highway here.
This is a highway.
You see horses crossing a
It's
one lane bridge, right? And that one lane bridge, they have it set up so one side of that road always has to yield, so the other side goes through. Oh, come in. And so, but as far as the one lane bridges, there's a yielding process, but also you're yielding to horses. You see lots of dirt bikes, dirt motorcycles, and cows in the road, for example. And take a look at this. Take a look at the shoulder. What do you think of a shoulder for a highway? There are no shoulders. So you see, when you're driving there in Costa Rica, you see people walking right on the road, right on the side of the road. Not the safest thing in the world, but that's something you readily see. The other thing, sometimes you see, like on that motorcycle, you see a couple people driving that. I've seen like maybe 3 or 4 people on a bicycle one time.
Well, mostly on the
How did
dirt
you do
bikes.
that? Mostly dirt bikes, but some have been on bicycles too. So, the roads are either asphalt, 2-lane roads, or dirt roads. I don't know, not quite right there. So here's another picture.
This is Costa Rica.
This is Costa Rica. This is getting into the town. Remember, this is the Samara area, which is more an agricultural area as opposed to like the San Jose area, where it's more of a great city area. But you see another example there. And the other thing you're going to see, here's another example of the road. You're going to see local residents that call themselves Ticos. They sell fruit and such by the side of the road. And this is pretty typical of the town that Liz lives in.
Actually, this is Nicoya. So this is a bigger town than where Liz lives
Yeah,
in.
this is the-
But this is what Costa Rica looks like. It's a rural communities for the most part. Stores will look just like that. And then, go ahead.
People are very friendly though, very, very friendly, and they're a joy to be around actually. Although it helps to know a little Spanish. Really helps. But a couple things about the traffic and I'll go on. There's been a surge in traffic, especially more tractor trailers. there have been spontaneous things that happen, like out of control, out of the blue strikes where people will just swarm out in the streets and block all the traffic. That's always an unexpected thing you run into. Sometimes the road repairs and maintenance fall behind schedule and there'll be a detour. You just have to take a detour way around things. One time, this was the darndest thing I ever saw. We were driving into town and we didn't know quite what was going on, but there were throngs of people walking right in the middle of the road, the asphalt road. And we finally found out what it was. It was a funeral procession. They're carrying the coffin all the way to the cemetery, and you have to respect the culture. You can't try to get around that. You have to respect, that's their tradition, their custom, and you have to honor their customs. And you just have to tell yourself, okay, it's going to take a long time to get to where you want to go. We better pull off and enjoy the scenery.
Yeah, and they were walking in the middle of the road.
Carrying the casket.
I think the casket was actually in the back of a,
It could have been the back of a pickup.
yeah.
I think that's what it was, yeah. Here's an example of,
This
again,
is a
one of
Costa Rica.
the roads you get off on to go to Liz's house looks a lot like that. This is a pretty good road. You don't see any potholes on that. It's great, but this is the kind of scenery you'll see. It's very beautiful, very jungle-ish, you know.
If you go, rent a 4-wheel drive.
Oh, yeah, it's a must.
No matter where you go.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be either huge potholes or a grade, very steep grade that you don't anticipate. Do not rent a sedan. You will go nowhere.
There's a pothole right
Yeah,
there.
this is her, where she lives. This is Samara.
Samara, where she lives. You kind of can get a feel for the countryside. It's interesting. There are some wonderful restaurants. It doesn't look like much, does it? But there are bake shops, restaurants. Again, the people are friendly. You see all kinds of things like horses in the middle of the road like that.
Almost every town will have a soccer field as part of the town. And it won't be unusual to see horses and they're eating off the soccer field.
So to reach Liz's house, and this is, we pull off the asphalt road and travel on a dirt road about 2 miles up a fairly steep grade to reach the house. Again, like Judy's mentioned, you've got to have a 4-wheel drive. There's a section of that road, they stop the car. If it's not in 4-wheel, put it in 4-wheel, and that's the only way. You feel like you're just going straight up in the car. Liz's house, which is right here, is a typical example of homes that many of the expats live in. This is not typical for Ticos, very typical for expats. The house has a view of the ocean looking out this way. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, good size. One thing you'll see, especially with all the expats, you're always going to see a swimming pool. And you're always going to see ceiling fans because it's a very warm climate all the time. And a lot of times, I know with Liz, the only time they turn the air conditioning on is at night when they're in bed, so you can sleep. Sometimes it's really, really hot.
They
But they
do,
also, oh, go
they
ahead.
do an outside type of life. If you can see here, all of the decking over it, and then here is an area where they spend most of their day actually in time. And that's where they'll eat and have meals and stuff. It's covered, they have fans in there, and it's relatively comfortable. It's got good circulation, but that's how they live the life in Costa Rica.
But look to the left here. You see that little building there? That is a casita. They rent that out to tourists, American tourists, or any tourist that wants to stay for a month or 6 months or a year. It's rented out. That building, that casita, is about typical of what many of the Ticos live in. Ticos live in more of what you say, a 2-3 room
Yeah,
house.
they're usually made out of concrete bricks with stucco on the outside of it. It's usually going to have maybe 2 bedrooms and a bath, and then a kitchen, living room, open area, and that's it. They're very simple homes. Most of that we were talking about, most of those houses that the Ticos live in are traditional houses, and they're also passed down from family member to family member to family member. And Liz says very few of those ever come into the real estate market. But they're generational homes. And like where she lives, there's one man who owned a lot of property. And over the time we've gone there, went from 2 or 3 houses to 3 or 4 or 5 houses with grandchildren getting married. They just add on another house up a little higher in the mountains.
Another view is this. Here's Judy out front of the house. You can see a view from the swimming pool. You see a view of the jungle there. Now from this swimming pool, looking straight this way, there are 3 places where you can see the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, which is out there. It's really pretty. It's really scenic. There are some very beautiful bushes. Doesn't look so pretty here, but there's another photo we'll get to. But these bushes in Costa Rica, plants grow all the time. It's always summer, so these things are growing and growing and growing, and they have to be trimmed back all the time, or they just overgrow things.
And these bushes particularly bring in butterflies.
Yeah,
All kinds of
beautiful butterflies. Yeah, we love to see them. Now, let's take a look at a few things. There are some interesting cows and iguanas.
That's interesting, that was
Oh,
biggest thing ever.
There are some interesting insects
Oh,
and geckos. And these geckos are kind of interesting things. They don't harm anyone, but they do come in your house and they will be up on the wall. Way up on the wall.
You hear
Yeah,
the
up on the
noise. There they
ceiling, up on
are.
the wall. I mean, you're living in the jungle with insects and animals, and so all I can say is, you just have to come to expect a little bit of that. But they're interesting creatures.
I have a
that you
side
see.
note. It's a slower paced living. And then because it's hot, people do move slower. But the only thing that doesn't move slow in Costa Rica is the insects. They are busy, they are hardworking. They have these little ants that will take a piece of flower or a leaf, and they're called leaf ants, and they will march along with their things going to their ant home. I mean, it's unreal the amount of activity and hardworking these insects do. Everybody else is kind of slow, but these insects are not slow.
So you would think you can control insects with insecticide and other things, but there are so many of them. You just have to realize they're gonna be there, they're gonna come and they're gonna go, and life will go on. So it's kind of the way it is. These are a few photos of some of the really beautiful flowers. I don't have too many pictures. There are so many beautiful flowers there, but there's only a few. The one on the right are those flowers from those bushes by Liz's house that grow and grow and grow.
And you see the butterfly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are not planted. These are natural growing flowers.
Okay, so Costa Rica survives on tourism. And tourism is the largest source of income and hard currency and produces about $2.8 billion a year. That's a lot. Other sources of income come from exports of coffee, bananas, pineapples, and palm oil. Here you see, there I am at a coffee farm. And he's explaining, you see the plant, the coffee plant, and processing of the coffee beans and how they store things. We had the best time on this coffee tour. They just treat you royally. I mean, they just, welcome you in. They're friendly and they're hospitable and they're glad you're there. Yeah, you were talking about this, Judy.
Yeah. One of the most popular areas to go to in Costa Rica is Arenal, and that is where the volcano is. And if you're going to go there, it's I would go. Again, that was our first trip, and it was really beautiful. So you have the volcano, it's not active right now, but one never knows about these volcanoes, right?
Yeah.
So the volcano's there, and it's tall, and you can see it from all over. It's a major landscape marker. There's also called the hanging bridges. And you go out, and there's about 17 hanging bridges that you go walk over about a mile. And you're going directly over the valleys of the jungle. And you get an idea of what does it really look like. And this is the view. They're phenomenal, they're fun, they're exciting. They wave as you walk on them.
You're hundreds of feet off the
I
ground.
mean, you're looking a
Look
long
way
ways
down, like,
down.
wow.
But if you ever go to Costa Rica, you need to do the
Oh.
hanging bridges. You need to go to the
That's
Arnell
nice.
area.
We'd like that.
But it's really a beautiful place to be. Other things that are popular, if you want to think, is zip lining. All over the whole countryside, there's different places to zip line. Horseback, more zip lining.
On the zip line, one I was on, we were both on, it went from about 5 different points. You zip line from one area to start, then you go down this way and down this way, and then finally you end all the way down, but it's a lot of fun. You're right up in the jungle and the top of the jungle trees as you go. It's enjoyable.
Another thing is, quad riding is part of the necessity there. Like you see our daughter, and is that you in the back? I think it is.
Yep, that's me there.
Over here, and that they all drive quads. Instead of cars, they'll drive the quads. They may have a car, that's if it's really pouring and raining, but the majority of their day, they're going back and forth to town or doing business or whatever on quads, and they're all over. That's their main transportation, and they have baskets so they can put their groceries in it and stuff in this order. And that is the main transportation around. Then you can also rent these 4x4 quads, and they're really nice. There are not many of them. That will cost you as much as a car.
Well, to rent, well, it's not that, if you
To
bought,
buy.
one, yeah.
To rent, they're still expensive compared to a regular quad. But we went out with one, and it was really fun because then we could get off-road and go through the areas, and we could be together. So that was really fun. But we frequently go on quad rides when we're there with Liz out into the up higher parts of the mountains and stuff.
Quad riding is just the most fun. I mean, it's unlike anything around here. I mean, you have these roads that go up through river beds. If there's a little bit of water, you can still get through it. Up mountains, you can avoid all the potholes. I mean, we have had a lot of fun adventures on those quads.
And they're easier
you
and
feel
more
pretty-
comfortable to ride on than the cars, because the cars hitting all these things. That way you're not going so up and down. It's a much easier way to travel.
Of course, there's always fishing. I think it's better actually to go out on a boat and go fishing, but this was one day we said, oh, we'll just try it from the shore. But
But that is a typical boat.
Yeah.
We're not talking fancy boats. We're talking, that is a typical fishing boat. They do have some fancy ones, but the majority of the locals, well, that's their boat that they use to go fishing in.
once we went on a journey way far out in the ocean.
It wasn't a much better boat than
Looking
that
for
one.
dolphins, it was a little bit better, but not much. Anyway, it's.
Well, out of the 6 of us on it, 3 people got boat sick.
Oh, God,
It was
seasickness,
That was
yeah.
really bad.
Yeah, I've never gotten seasick.
The other popular thing is horses. Horses are very prominent there. And we've gone horseback riding. And it's, you had that romantic scene of riding along the edges of the water. And that's a real possibility to do there and out through the jungle. But horseback riding is very popular, and it's a main way of transportation for many of the locals. They go out and they still have horses and their farms and stuff. And so you'll see that very frequently. It's not a manufactured picture. It's kind of what goes on there.
Again, Ticos are really involved in this tourism, and they support the whole economy. This is a beach scene. I think Judy took these pictures at night. She's really has that eye for beauty. And these are from the beach, and we wanted to just throw that in. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, more than half the population is involved in tourism in some manner, shape, or form. In the service industries, working as hotel owners, tour guides, waiters. It's expected that if you're an expat and you're going there to live, and you're building a house or buying a house, it's expected that you will hire a Tico as both a housekeeper, one for housekeeping, one for gardening, and employ that person at least 1 day a week. Now, the wage is only $4 to $8 an hour. So you can imagine what's kind of interesting. This restaurant that we're eating at right here is not something a Tico could afford to go to. The thing that I found that we were both surprised we found out, the food in Costa Rica, the restaurant food in Costa Rica is every bit as expensive as it is here. it's very, as you see, it's very casual. You're always eating out under an awning or something. But take a look at these cats. Watching. So it's very casual. It's very relaxed. These are cats. There also are dogs that walk through. Sometimes there are Tico guitar players who come up and they're kind of serenade your table. But I will talk about one other thing. There has been some talk about gentrification, where expats come in and others who have wealth build up the area, frequent restaurants, and increase the cost of living, forcing Ticos who work there to live out a ways. And they have, and then they have to drive miles in just to go to work. So there's some talk of that. It's interesting. That was the first thought I had was, I see the expats and the wealth because, you know, if you're going there to live, you're retiring using your Social Security and whatever other investments. I see people with quite a bit of money. And I think on the other hand, I see the rock or block houses that the Ticos live in. I wonder if they resent those folks, but they don't seem to. They seem to be very relaxed. And the thing I have to mention too, it's also a very, very safe country. Because so here's an example of some of the expats that are there. I found them to be very fascinating people. I'll tell you about it in just a minute. I think they're drawn to Costa Rica because of laid back lifestyle, the cost of living, the beautiful scenery, rainforest, the beaches, and the diverse landscape you have while you're there. This is an example of one Sunday at the beach. We get into that in just a minute. Here's another beach scene.
And there's another group of probably expats.
Yep.
Sunday fun there.
Yep. This
And where Liz lives, they have what's called Sunday Fun Day. And they get together almost every Sunday and go to the beach. And it's all the expats. So you'll meet them there in the gathering, like at this one, we probably have a couple Canadians, maybe a Polish, maybe a German, some United States, some French. I mean, it's a very wild variety of people who live there. So like Liz's neighbors can be anybody from anywhere. And it's like, it varies on what's going on in the economy. Canadians particularly have been very happy when she first came. But because their dollar has shrunk, there's less Canadians down there now. So it kind of varies, but this is like a Sunday gathering. Liz's husband likes to help organize these, and he'll cook hot dogs. And then the rest of the group will all bring other food. And so they have a big meal of variety of foods that they bring in and eat hot dogs and enjoy each other. They'll get together from like 4 or 5 hours on the beach. So that's kind of a typical, they play a lot of cornhole. That's a real popular thing that they do. That's kind of a typical Sunday afternoon gathering.
Some go swimming, some just want to be out in the open. And they all, again, it's a typical gathering we see on Sundays. They also have something called First Fridays. So the first Friday of the month, another excuse to come out to the beach, have a few drinks, have some hot dogs, enjoy yourself.
And it's also the first Fridays, they'll often meet at a restaurant and we'll eat there. And it's also how they bring in new people who's coming in. The real estate agents all recognize there's going to be a first Friday. And so if you're coming into the community and you want to get to meet people, I'm sure that is how Liz and Rusty met with the rest of the community.
One time over there, we met with a couple called Tom and Val. They're retired Kansas City folks. In fact, she still did some consulting via Zoom. He owned factory in down Kansas City, Missouri.
They made picture frames.
Picture frames. They retired, built a $1 million house with 2 fancy casitas, kind of like, a little bit like Liz, except it was fancier. Which they rent out for about $1,200 to $1,500 a month. That was their idea, like, well, if we need money, we can rent these casitas out, because there is quite a demand, people coming there who want to stay we want to spend some time there. They don't want to just come for a week, they want to come for a few months. We met another couple I talked about, Joe and Debbie from Florida. Her first trip there was in the nineties, and when they retired, they both moved there. And even though they have children and grandchildren here in the States, Joe was just adamant, we're talking about, why did you come here? And he said, I'm never going back. I'm here, I'm never going back. I said, well, what about your grandchildren? Your children? Nope, they can come here if they want to. It was an interesting attitude. It's
She
like,
goes back once or twice a year or more, but he says, I will never go back to the state. But we never figured out why.
we met a woman.
Just his attitude about life, I guess.
We met a single woman who moved there from England. She was probably mid-40s. Very mysterious. So we were at a party with them one time. I was talking, I said, why did you come here? And she took offense at like, because I was thinking, a single person coming here, what are you doing?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But she kind of took offense at the question, so I backed off and said, but I find these people interesting. We met another lady, Zoe, from Canada. She's a folk singer. She supports herself, singing at bars and restaurants and places. Very, again, a very casual, freewheeling kind of lifestyle. We did meet some of Liz's neighbors, Lauren and Chris. We'll get to the pictures of them in a minute. They have a 1-year-old baby who was born there. Okay, so.
Do you know about anchor babies here, right? They have an anchor baby
Baby there.
there. And because the baby was born there, they didn't get citizen or resident,
Residency.
not citizenship, but residency because.
Now this gentleman,
An anchor baby, particularly here in the States, what is a hot issue if you're not aware of it. A lot of people will come here partway pregnant and live long enough, and I don't know all the guidelines, to create a residency that if the baby's born here and the baby has US citizenship. Baby will go back at 3 or 4 months when they're healthy enough back to whatever country it came from. A lot of it is from Arab countries. It's very interesting. My hairdresser did this for his hair. And he knows which flights not to take because he says there are some that are just baby flights. And he says the whole plane will be full of babies. And he said they all came over, they all had their babies, they all got their citizenship papers done, and then they'll go back and live. And he says the number of US babies is huge in the Arab countries, which I wasn't even aware of, but he's the one who was giving me the whole lecture about it. And he says, I have children, but I was living here for 3 years before we had children. I'm still here 30 years later. I didn't do an anchor child.
so this couple is Lauren and Chris are from Denver. He is a
Commercial painter.
and I'm not sure what
She's a nurse.
she's a nurse. But interesting, I asked, well, where did you have the baby? And they said, well, we saw Dr. Freddie, who's has a setup in the back of the pharmacy.
He is the town doctor.
He's the town doctor. I mean, so if you are injured, you need medicine, you're gonna go to the pharmacy and probably see Dr. Freddie and get something. Right there.
Well,
The pharmacist
If you can.
there can write any prescriptions.
Yeah.
You don't have to see a doctor if you get a prescription. The pharmacist can diagnose and treat. We found out on the first
Yes.
2 trips. And Dr. Freddie has his office behind the pharmacy, and he then sees the more critically ill. And Dr. Freddie he's a very good doctor from what we can tell. And he's the one who saw our son-in-law when he was ill with the infection and said, you're bad, you're really bad, you gotta go.
You're going to San
You're going to
Jose.
San Jose now.
Yeah.
And so he did. But he loves to send people by airplane. We think he gets a cut. This is my daughter's statement because she says he helicopters and planes people all the time out of this area. So we figure he has it in somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
Just a few thoughts about the cost of living. A person probably can live comfortably in Costa Rica about for around 2,000 a month. A couple might need 2,000 to 3,000, they figure. I actually think it's more than that when I see how some people spend money. An interesting fact I found, a $400,000 home, which is sort of typical for what these houses go
For
for expats. Property tax on that would only be about $1,000 a year. So it's not very reasonable. The property taxes are a lot less than here. And like we see here, expats have their own community. They do their own activities. And most of them know, almost all of them speak English pretty well. We met a guy from Poland who could speak English. He was a little bit difficult to understand, but most of them speak English well. Some speak Spanish, at least a little Spanish. Our daughter was a French major. She had an affinity to learning languages. She does a pretty good job, but she says even she needs to be learning more Spanish. She's taken some classes while she's there. Here's a typical bar at the beach. Kind of very typical scene here.
Yeah, this would be a usual scene.
Yep.
People go out to the beach if they have a restaurant
Have a
that's on the
margarita.
beach.
Yeah.
And they'll go back to one.
Okay.
The gathering there is a place called Limey's. Limey's
Limey's
is
is
the
the
gathering place for the expats in Samara. And it's a bar. It has great, not bad food, good drinks, a lot of beer. It's a place where everybody gets together. And like sometimes there's a group of men who play what they call the skeleton band is what they call themselves. And they'll go to Limey's and play. And most of the expats will come and support them. So that's kind of what their community life is like. Colonies,
Colonies, yeah.
it's their own currency.
This is one of the favorite places we like to go to on the quad. It's called Punta Elisa. Very beautiful resort area built up by Marriott, I think it is.
Marriott owns it.
Marriott owns it, and you see, so you see the swimming pool right there, and beyond that is the ocean. Swimming pool has a swim up bar. It's really fancy. It has these little houses, places you can stay down below, and again, it's right in the middle of the jungle. This is actually what you're looking at right here. This is all of us at breakfast at Punta Elisa, and the couple we were talking about with the baby are these people right here, Chris and Lauren, and
And they're both working remote.
we just happened to run into them when we went there, and Liz said, "Oh, it's Chris and Lauren." They said, "Join us for breakfast." So we did, and we had again the most interesting discussion about why are you doing this? You know, what's there to do? This happened to be what they call it, their date day.
Mhm.
Well, they had a nanny watch the baby, and then they're gone all day. They come out, because this is probably, 20 miles from Samara?
Probably.
20 miles out to this great place to eat. They go touring on the quad. It's an interesting lifestyle.
Now, we say 20 miles and you're thinking American. 20 miles, I'll make that 15, 20 minutes. No, we're talking Costa Rican. And a 20-mile trip is probably an hour.
Wow.
I mean, because the roads are bad, you don't go fast.
Yeah.
You know, like the first time we went from where Liz lives over to the volcanoes. And it was like, what, 100 miles maybe? 4 hours later, we get there, we're like, this is our first time. And I went, how many miles was it? You know, but that's because of the roads, because of the traffic, because of incidental things that run along the way.
But these resort areas are every bit as nice as anything you're gonna find around here. It's really,
A tough scale.
here's another example of a breakfast meal there.
What's interesting with the cuisine, there are a lot of chefs. Like with the Marriott, they probably trained their own chefs. But we went to a variety of cities or places we've gone, towns, or not cities, towns. There's the most excellent food, absolutely phenomenal food, mostly made by chefs or people who have been trained very well. We went with Liz this last trip. We went over to a little restaurant in another neighboring town.
This is a Swiss chef. He was from Switzerland, he and his wife. And it was interesting when we got there, it was just there was nobody else there. It was just
We were
us.
early, but that
We
was.
were early, but
the
it was
day.
just us. It was the chef and his wife. And so they come and we have this great meal and they just joined us basically. We talked about, well, how did you do this and why'd you come here and how does this working? And
And
was
they left,
enjoyable.
they wanted to get away from Switzerland.
yeah,
And his parents moved with him. And he grows a lot of his own vegetables and stuff on his property. But it's how they chose to be away from the world. We've been in one of the other cities and we had the best Parisian food I've ever had in my life. It was phenomenal. The chef was from Peru and it was the best meal. I've never seen sea bass cooked so well. And so we've had some great meals there. They're not cheap.
no.
But it's interesting how good the quality of the food generally is.
So I'm just looking at, again, this is Lisa, we're looking out. This is a wedding setup actually for our daughter's wedding setup before she got married there. Right there by the beach. And that's Liz and her husband.
Look at the
Beach
flowers.
location. You see the beautiful flowers they have. Very, very nice. Okay, now you want to talk about these, Judy?
This is some of the fruits. These are native
We had
fruits.
those.
Some of them, I don't know all their names, they're Spanish names. But the one with the black seeds and it's called like an apple custard is what it translates over to. One's pineapple.
I recognize that.
These little ones with the hairy balls, they're very sweet or semi-sweet with a nut inside of them. They're kind of grow in lots and lots of places and lots of trees. You can find it, the star fruits, the guava, just a variety of different fruits that are easily available. And like I said, most of these probably are not been planted. There's some of them are native fruits that grow. Like on Liz's property, they have a banana, they have a lime. They don't produce real well. I don't think they have the best versions.
They have those little honeybees too.
Yeah. Yeah, bees are real popular there and they're helping, but Rusty does woodworking and he builds honey boxes, bee boxes. And they're for the teeny little bees that are medicinal. And so you have a special need for these bees.
Here's another, see, we like to eat out. So here's another picture of a meal we had there, a local dish. Some things, again, this is example of quad riding. And some of the roads you get on, you kind of see kind of cut out of the side of that mountain. But to get an idea of those quads can basically go anywhere. They're really good. You feel safe because there isn't that much traffic out on these country roads. Jungle roads, I guess I should say. And this was a restaurant the only way to get there was taking the quad along to the dirt roads. And we've came up with this place. It doesn't look like much, but it faces the ocean and it's really pretty. They had some great food.
Great views.
Great
And this
views,
is
yeah.
not unusual. That you're gonna go and find a restaurant out in the middle of nowhere
That's fancy.
that has great food.
So here's an example of some luxury living in Costa Rica. The thing I want to explain to you all is what, unlike the United States, individuals cannot own the beach. The beachfront is open to everyone. It cannot be owned. So it's always open. You're never worrying about trespassing on someone's land because, again, it's open to everyone. Okay, you want to talk about this? This is the other weird thing. Liz and Rusty took us to this really strange place. So in the middle of Costa Rica,
It's a brand new development.
we come to this development, which could actually be done anywhere in the United States or Italy or any other place or Spain. It's like this luxury development in the middle of nowhere. I guess this is the only thing we could figure out. This would be maybe for someone who wants to live in Costa Rica, but wants the Western lifestyle. Because,
Yeah, the next picture.
okay,
Would you think you're in Costa Rica? Does that look more like you might be in Italy or France or Spain or the United States? This is what they're building and it's like a very fancy development that's going to be a planned neighborhood that you're gonna live there and survive, eat and live there the whole time in apartment type settings, and they're not gonna be very cheap.
So I guess the thing I'd say is you can find a little bit of everything in Costa Rica. Finally, we end with a picture of San Jose. See, it's a big city with see big office buildings, houses, roads are fairly narrow. We haven't been there, but our daughter and son-in-law have, and they say the traffic's really tough to get around, navigate around. And again, it's more crowded. Where they live is more of an agricultural, rural community. But even it is changing because as more and more people come, expats come and build, it's expanding, it's growing. And they're even saying, hey, it's getting bigger, we'd like to see it get. So, but I guess with that, I'll stop and say, to you, so does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Virgie.
What kind of shots and things did you have to get before?
Nothing.
No.
Really? Okay.
It's not totally third world, it's not first world, it's just kind of in between, but no, I've never felt health risk.
Did you ever feel unsafe?
No.
No, that's one of the nicest things to say.
No.
It's a very safe
Very safe.
community. People respect each other. They, you don't feel that threatened feeling. It's a,
Regardless if you're in the rural area or city
Yeah, and then to really see the local people, we went to mass one Sunday at a Catholic church there, and of course, everything's in Spanish. But to see the large families and children, and everyone is friendly to you, even though they say, I can't speak English very well, but they're all friendly and they're welcoming. So it's always a joy to see the people because they are really down to earth, good people.
Can I ask a question on Zoom? But for those of us interested in maybe buying a place there, could we find out your daughter's information since she's a real estate agent?
Absolutely. Be happy to welcome you there.
drop Bill an email or whatever.
Do you have my email address? Can I get yours?
Yes. So I was trying to figure out how to.
I don't have.
Can't get my chat to
Or
open.
if you want to put that.
But I'm on. Oh, here we go. Here's my email.
Just a sec. Oh,
Here's a pen.
There we go. I put it in the chat.
Okay.
It's in the chat. We can get it from the chat.
just a sec.
And selling property there, the one thing I don't think we did mention that's different, there are no mortgages. You have to pay for the
Oh.
property for that, at that time, but there's no mortgages, the banks don't do mortgages.
You can't borrow money.
It's an unheard of thing is to borrow money in Costa Rica.
You mentioned 400,000. Is that an average home price for?
I'd say it's probably from more 300 to 400. Some of those homes are gonna go for more than that, but I'd say more than maybe.
And they also have $1 million homes,
Yeah.
but 3, 4, probably you could get a nice place.
You would get a nice place.
So if you have insurance, if you have your own insurance, then do you still go to Dr. Freddie or is there? Oh, no.
Freddie would be your first stop.
Yeah, it would be.
And
It's-
you have Dr. Freddie, and then in Liberia, which we showed the picture, there's another hospital. But if you need better care or you have a worse problem, your next step was at San Jose. And for Liz, that's about a 4.5 hour drive.
And our son-in-law had a really bad knee infection, and Dr. Freddie said, you've got to go to San Jose. And they, instead of using the socialized medicine, they went to a private hospital.
Do they have their own insurance?
Nope,
The cost for the hospital stay wasn't too bad.
no.
It was pretty affordable, but the medications were not. They had to pay for even a serious antibiotic, and it was $5,000.
Oh my.
So IV antibiotic.
No, it was oral by that
Well,
point.
in the hospital it
Yeah,
was, and then.
but it was $5,000 to get the medication for a month.
What about dental?
Yes, they have a dentist.
Yeah.
I don't know, I haven't heard too many stories about it. Preston's been to the dentist.
Rusty doesn't go to the dentist until he has to, because he doesn't want to go to the dentist.
Maybe Dr. Freddie does that too.
No, go to the dentist, but we've never heard many stories
No, we
about
don't
it.
know many stories about the dentist.
I don't think there's regular tooth cleaning going on in the
I don't think so.
neighborhood.
Do expats give up their US citizen? I mean, how does that work? Do they have to, can they only stay there so long and then come back to the US?
Yes, before they get their citizenship, they have to either
It's
come
not
back to
citizen- it'll
US.
be
or go-
residency, not citizenship.
Residency, or go to Nicaragua for a short trip to come back,
They'll leave the country somehow.
leave and
Yeah.
come
What
back.
about that guy that's never going back to the United States?
He has
I
residency.
think he's a resident, yeah.
Oh,
So he
yes.
does not have to.
Okay.
He got that taken care of years ago. But most generally, he'll come back and forth every 3 months.
So if you wanted to send your daughter a package or a gift, you
You know
can't.
what we do?
Oh, you can.
No, we can't do that.
We
No,
were
what-
lucky enough.
Actually, what they do is, if they have a friend who's coming back to the States, like Lauren and Chris came back to Denver, and Liz needed something, I don't know what it
Or
was.
credit card.
Credit card.
The credit card
We mailed-
expired while she was
We
over.
mailed a credit card to Lauren and Chris in Denver, and then they took it back when they went back to Costa Rica.
Oh my
Yeah, it's tricky.
Oh my, okay.
And you don't send packages.
Okay.
It's one of the things you just can't do. Seems weird, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, that's
So are
right.
utilities expensive down there?
No, I don't think so, but I will say this.
It's not
Um,
reliable.
Where they live, for example, Liz where she lives, their water comes from a mountain stream. It comes through PVC pipe, which most of it lays on ground, top of the ground. So there are occasions when a cow steps on the pipe, breaks it, they have to scout, find out what happened, and repair the pipe. Sometimes you have things like that happen. But it's real different. I mean, nothing has to be buried there. It's always warm there. It's not like here, you've got to bury pipes 3 feet under the ground so they don't freeze. It's a different kind of thinking. The water is generally good, although we usually drink bottled water when we're there. Just to make sure that we don't
Get sick.
get sick.
You don't need anything.
Does she come home here to visit very often? Okay.
Well, about 3 times a year. Kind of depends what's going on. She's coming back for Easter. So we'll see her,
Next week.
Yeah, next
Yeah.
week.
Didn't she met her husband there?
Yeah, but
Okay.
he's from Dallas.
Oh, okay.
And met in the expat group.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
And yeah, but he's been in there a little longer than she has. He's from Dallas. You never know.
You don't know if that's true.
anyway, we enjoyed
It's a
it.
great place to go.
Yeah.
Great place to go. It's certainly a great place to visit.
I think we all especially enjoyed your presentation because you did exactly what you said you were gonna do. You did a little bit on the scenery, but a lot on the culture and the people. And I think we all have a really good feeling about this country. Thank you so much for coming. Let's give them another hand.
Might add one more thing, by every school, church is pretty close to school, there's a soccer field. Soccer is a big sport.
All ages.
Thanks for coming, everyone.